Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Way T. Lightheart from the Awesome Health Podcast, and I am delighted today to share with you a fellow I just met at the Canfitpro in Toronto. It's a professional event where the world's best experts on health, fitness, performance in the industry get to speak. And Ben was one of the featured speakers that flew in all the way from Australia. They stacked him with some crazy amount of speeches. But I had the good fortune to actually listen to one, particularly on physique, competition, contest preparation, a lot of the mistakes that people make, the voodoo that people get involved with, and how they stay away from that. And he just had so much sensibility and so much experience that I really, really resonated. So I want to welcome to the show, Ben Siong. How are you doing, buddy?
I am very well. Thank you so much for having me on.
So for our listeners who's listening who have maybe thought about physique preparation or have done it and maybe had some challenges, or they wanted to get involved in this and don't know where to go, let's just start about, we'll get into that in a minute, but I want to get your background of how did you end up in this space and become such an expert? Of course, and tell us all about Australia and what you're up to and all that sort of stuff. So give us the whole kind of enchilada before we dive into the details.
The spiel. Excellent.
Yeah.
I got into the industry out. It was my quest basically to look better more than anything else. So purely for aesthetic reasons, I wouldn't try to cover it to say for health or anything. I wanted to look better. I was a fat kid growing up in Singapore, actually. And growing up there, because the Asian society has such small builds, I was classified as an obese child growing up. So throughout my whole childhood, all the way into my teens, I was obese. And I never had the chance to kind of shoot up tall, and lose that excess weight on me. And so for me, it was a conscious effort to have to lose all the extra fat in order to get down. And so I remember basically in my own quest to look better, that was what I did. I did what I knew how to, I guess what I knew how to do, which was to cut my calories. And I put myself in a situation where I was just doing a lot of cardio, and I lost a good amount of weight, roughly about 25 kilos. I mean, in Australia, we call it kilos. So probably 50 odd, 60 pounds.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight.
Within a period of 3 months. And within a period of time, it was an unhealthy sort of journey, but I got to where I wanted to be and spend, the next 2 years living in a sort of an emotional cycle with food. And as you know, a lot of people are very emotionally connected to food. And I was very much the same, of going through periods of trying to dig food out and get it out after you've eaten, and then starve yourself and in and out. So I was fluctuating within that for 2 years. And then after that, I decided, no, I wanted to chase health. I wanted to look better, but I also wanted to be healthy. And that kind of sparked my journey on seeking information. And the more you seek, the dumber you feel. And that was really it. That was what kind of got me started. And that was a good 20 odd years, 30 years ago. So now I'm blessed in the position where I do what I love, and that is continue to teach people my passion. And my passion continues to seek out information. I'm always the student. I'm always looking at ways to get myself healthy but leaner at the same time. I'm always trying to push body composition, and that's exactly why I'm in this unique space where I work with competitors. And a lot of the competitors that I work with are scarred by the competition process, particularly females in general, that have been trained by coaches that have taught them a method of preparation, a methodology that often stresses out their adrenal system, completely wreaks havoc and the hormones and the hormonal system. And when they see me, their body's in disarray, not having their periods. There's a whole range of things going on with them, metabolic syndrome. And so what I tend to do is work backwards to try to restore health, but also in the process, give them an understanding of self-love, give them an understanding on how to bring their body into an optimal body composition. But also we want to look at things like maintaining energy levels, maintaining hormonal balance, and teaching them to have a much better relationship with food. So everyone has that emotional connection with food. And that's my journey. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I want to dive into this because when you were giving your presentation, you were kind of showing a lot of the nuances or a lot of the patterns and stuff. And I've seen this myself. You go around to the competitions and you see ladies who are listening to someone, usually the biggest guy in the gym or someone who has a couple of titles or whatever it is. They might have a background in science or nutrition or whatever, or they might be blessed genetically, or they might be enhancing themselves with a variety of pharmacological agents. And a lot of girls desperate, I would say, for cosmetic ideal or what they've determined, and maybe the acknowledgement that it comes from being a fitness competitor or a bodybuilding champion or a figure competitor, whatever that happens to be, that adulation or that acknowledgement that you're worthy, that you're valuable, that you're pretty, that you're fit, that you're whatever that is. And there's a lot of people attracted to that, especially in today's social media world where, you know, the presentation isn't worth everything. And then you see them after the shows, the ones that haven't done this well thought out, and most people don't. It's impossible to think. And you're kind of in that age where you think, I can just do anything I want. I'm different than everybody. Then you see them, the same girls coming back to the shows later on, only they're 20 to 30 pounds heavier, sometimes even more than that. They can't get the weight off. They're stuck at this. They're wearing the baggy sweats and everything. You can literally see them suffering inside as they're maybe encouraging their friends or whatever. And meanwhile, they're on this struggle cycle. How does that happen? Like, what's going on? Can you explain from your experience as a coach and someone who preps people from shows and helps people recover from bad preps? How does that happen for competitors out there?
I think a lot of competitors, a lot of ladies in particular, jump into a competition because they like what they see as the end product. So they look at a female on stage, she carries herself well, she looks amazing, and that becomes a goal. So you start to see that and you go, I want to be there. But I don't think they actually have an understanding of the journey of what it actually takes to get to that goal. Now, once they throw themselves into the equation, they go, okay, I've got a goal and I'm going to work myself there. They start to realize that it becomes more like a means to an end. So standing on stage, the purpose that they want to stand on stage could represent anything. It could be, self-confidence. It could be a goal that they want to achieve through their lifetime, kind of a tick the box sort of thing. It could be anything, but I don't think the pull of the goal itself is strong enough for them. And so when they hop into the process of prepping, it becomes a means to an end. They just want to get there. And in the process of doing that, their coach will probably tell them, cut their calories. You got to stick to your chicken breast and broccoli and brown rice. You got to do X amount of cardio a day. You got to stop posing. You got to do a whole range of different things. Now, the more you get into it, the closer you are to the goal, the more desperate you are to get to a particular shape. So they do what they can from the advice of the coach, obviously, because they're following blindly. And then they get to stage and then they compete. But a lot of them actually hate the process. They resent the process of getting to stage. They like the final product. But during that time, when you stand on stage, remember, you are probably dehydrated. So you feel horrendous. Your energy levels are low. You don't look the way you want to look, but you feel horrendous in there. And so you would think that's the ultimate goal. That's great. But their ultimate goal is actually, once they stand on stage, eating the sugar that comes after standing on stage. So everyone looks forward to that.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because this is kind of like the deep, dark secret of the sport. Is I've seen so many people, and I've been there myself, I was a former competitor, that they're literally planning out the binge after the contest, like detail by detail, day by day, meal by meal.
Dream about it. Absolutely.
So what's that about?
That is, well, you tell me. I mean, at the end of the day, it's something they look forward to. So from a mental point of view, because they've kept themselves so strict on a nutrition plan, which is really regimented, that obviously represents a mental ease for them. So it's something else. They call it a cheat meal, where they go out there and they eat whatever they want to eat. So it's a relaxing sort of environment. They don't have to be regimented anymore. So mentally, it helps them for one. But also on the other side of things, it's a social thing for them. They can go out and eat. Now, we're all emotionally connected to food. And in any society, food represents something where if you're happy, you eat. If you're sad, you eat. If you're bored, you eat. And so throughout the
Social
day.
connections, you're going family events, holidays.
That's right. And so food is connected with so many different things. A lot of the times, if you kind of look at it, a lot of the times where we feel elated, happy, is associated with sugar, because that's exactly what sugar does. Sugar gives you a dopamine high. And what we don't understand, and what science has actually shown us nowadays, is that sugar, particularly refined sugar or white sugar itself, what it actually does is it alters the chemical structure of the brain. In fact, what it does is it changes the receptor sites, the dopamine receptor sites in the brain, so much so that your brain now says sugar is the main source of dopamine I want to take in. Any other form of dopamine coming in, any other form of rewards that come in, does not cut it. I don't want any other form of rewards. I just want sugar. So sugar literally alters the form of that receptor site. So your brain specifically looks for it. The more you take sugar, the more it feeds back into that. So you want more sugar, and so we build up this sort of emotional connection from a hormonal point of view, but also from a physiological point of view, that we need sugar. Yes. So now that if you're competing and you're stopping sugar, you're not taking in sugar, your body craves it. Your body looks for it, right? The longer you stay off it, the more you want it. The grass is always greener, isn't it? And so these people, they deprive themselves of sugar because it's the forbidden fruit. And then after competition, you get a chance to eat all the sugar you want. And this is exactly what happens. You start tasting the first bite. And when that sugar hit comes in that you've been craving for all this time, remember, your brain is already altered, waiting for that sugar to come through, you're going to snap. At that point of time, you have no control over your emotions, your body, or logical thought. You go with the flow. And instinctively, that's where you let loose. You just eat and eat and eat. By the time you know it, and this is exactly what you mentioned at the start of our conversation, that these girls, for example, over a span of 2 weeks after comp, they tend to put on 30 pounds, 40 pounds, and you can't recognize them.
Yes.
And that becomes a problem, because it's not just the fat that they put on, it's the body saying, after a competition where they're deprived of nutrients, let's absorb and keep the nutrients for one, but let's also hold on to the water, because there's a lot of inflammation going on. So they're a lot heavier, they're puffy. This is where they look themselves in the mirror and they go, I can't accept the person that I see right now, because now I competed to look good, but now I'm looking worse than I did before. And they can't accept it. So there is a massive conflict down there, and they go through waves looking at themselves, not being able to accept themselves looking that way and feeling that way. And typically, this is where everything stuffs up. So mentally, they're not doing well. Physiologically, their cells are not doing well because they're inflamed. And they keep going through that cycle throughout the period of a year. They tend to lose their period as well. And this is kind of the time where I see them. So when they come to me, a lot of the times they come to me without their period. They come to me with a lot of nutritional deficiencies. So bear in mind, they're eating a lot, but they're not actually digesting or breaking down or absorbing the nutrients. Hence, they are overeating, but undernourished.
I have this whole theory that obesity is actually it's a disease of deficiency. So let's talk about, and I like the fact that you're diving in particular in the female situation here, because we see, a female, particularly their endocrine system is far more sensitive and fluctuates at a much greater level than, say, a male's system. And then also when you look at a lot of girls are in their, they're relatively young, their early 20s or early 30s, and they're getting into these competitions where they normally have high estrogen levels, high body fat levels as a natural state for childbearing, but they're kind of suppressing the body's natural mechanisms. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen happen for a lot of these girls, or what happens, or kind of the recipe of what's going on, and then what gets compromised beyond just the food cravings?
Sure. Now, to start off with, I think if you kind of look at society nowadays, the estrogen levels of a female is already falsified. So typically we have an optimal amount of estrogen and progesterone within a female itself. Now, amidst that, there's a whole range of other hormones that are involved in this, luteinizing hormone and, FSH and so forth. But when you look at sort of estrogen levels, a lot of the environmental factors that we look around us feed into false estrogen. We call those xenoestrogens, right? So the foods that we take in, from the BPA in our cans, from the perfumes you spray, the chemicals in our water, these are false forms of estrogens that are already taken into the body. And so the body has an overload of estrogens. Okay, so for females, for example, when they have an overload of estrogens, they start to store fat selectively in parts of their body. We call them an estrogenic profile. So they will start storing fat more on the thighs. Some of them will say it's genetic. So sure, it can be genetic to a degree, but the genetic part comes with the fact that they cannot detoxify these estrogens that they take in.
Right.
So that is from a societal point of view. That already builds up.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, you've got other hormones such as insulin that play a big part in affecting how the body stores fat. And insulin is obviously the storage hormone for sugar. Now, we take in so much sugar from everywhere. All our foods are laden with sugar.
Oh yeah, a lot of hidden sugars in there too, right?
Absolutely. And we don't take that into account. In fact, whatever you think is great for us, say, for example, you take in fruits, and fruits may be great. A lot of fruits are also crossed nowadays to produce a higher sugar content because it suits the palate, isn't it? Nowadays, the more sugar we take, the more food becomes blend. So we want to take foods that are sweeter.
Correct.
And so
that's the sweetness scale keeps scaling up. So even like healthy sugars from natural sources don't taste good anymore. You want
more.
Yeah.
So when we are driven by high estrogen levels and compounding insulin fluctuations, the body itself is in a state of unrest. It's not optimal anymore. Now, I'm talking about all this because this is the starting point of a female that I'm seeing. This is not even the end point. This is the starting point.
Right. This is just walking in the door, haven't stepped on stage, haven't gotten a gym, nothing. They're already compromised from environmental conditions.
Absolutely. And lifestyle conditions. And then imagine if they get a coach that then strains them on the workouts, that the cortisol now level goes through the roof.
Yep.
Because they're overdoing something. He's telling them to eat certain foods or cut their calories, and then he mucks around with their hormones even more. You're creating basically an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
There is a whole range of unrest within the system from a hormonal basis that they are creating. And so the end product is something which is really diverse. Every female will go through, if their hormonal system is disrupted, is very selectively disrupted. So every female is different. And so this becomes the problem. This becomes the problem because when a coach sees them, he takes them as a blank slate and goes, okay, this is what we're going to do. But a lot of the times, they're not considering the original lifestyle factors that the female sees you with, which is elevated estrogen levels from the environment, disrupted insulin levels, disrupted cortisol levels, and then there's a range of other get as well. So I think it's important to understand the context in which we're dealing with.
Yeah. So here comes this lady. She walks into your place. She's dealing with all this stuff. What happens? And what do you do to kind of get people on the track? Or what? And then I want to think, what are some telltale signs if they're going off looking for a coach or they want to do one of these things? What are the telltale signs that they're dancing with the devil, so to speak?
Sure. I think for me, when I see someone, the main thing that I want to get out from them is their why.
Right.
And that's very, very important. So if you want to compete, no problem. Let's not talk about anything that's physical or physiological. Let's understand your why. Why are you wanting to compete? First and foremost, if you have a very strong why. Now, regardless of what that is, it can be aesthetic. It can be confidence. It can be, it can be anything. And there's no judgment here. And your why is very individual. But if your why is strong enough, your goal is strong enough, then you know that your sight towards the goal can be fixed. And this allows you to chip away to get to your goal. A lot of people have a very poor why. So they want to look a certain way, but they don't want to put in the work to get there. And this becomes a problem because then the whole journey itself becomes arduous. You're fighting the grain. Now, if let's say someone comes in as a strong white, this is ideal. I know why I want to get down there. It may be aesthetic reasons, it may be confidence reasons, but I'm going to do it and it's strong and I'm emotionally connected to it. Then that's a good starting platform for me. Once I understand their why, then I work out what goes on a physiological basis. So let's understand their lifestyle. Let's understand what they're doing from a nutritional point of view. Let's understand what they're doing from a training point of view. My philosophy is the longer the time I have to prep them, the better and the more enjoyable this journey becomes. Now, remember, I use the word journey because this is not a quick fix and it's not a means to an end. This is something that they will learn along the way about themselves, the emotion with food, and how to maintain an optimal body composition, keeping optimal health.
So let's talk about that for a second. So typically, how long do you think is it for most people, let's say, quote unquote, average body fat levels? And I hate that word average, but a typical woman that comes into you and you're playing, how long typically do you like to have to prepare them on a minimum side and then kind of an optimal side?
One question I tend to ask is whether they have been fat or big before. Now, remember, fat cells have a memory. Unfortunately, you don't lose fat cells. Not many fat cells die as you start to age. If you have X amount of fat cells, they expand in size and they shrink in size, right? So if you've been fat before, mature fat cells have a memory. That means the ability for you to get fat again is very easy. So if you've been fat before, you need a longer period of time to get lean. 100%. If you've always been lean, it's going to be a lot easier. So that forms my basis of how long I need to prep you for. Typically for a female, including what I like to look at is the emotional mindset behind getting to a comp.
Right.
Typically 6 months.
Yep.
Because the first 3 months is to work on the mindset.
Yep.
To make them understand the process, accept the process, and kind of learn to love the process.
Right.
And then we get them into it. Again, if you have been a bit bigger before, it might be up to a year to get ready for competition.
Yeah.
If you have always been someone who's very athletic and very, very lean, that period is a lot shorter. It could take 12 to 14 weeks to start you off for your first comp.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then what does that look like what does that look like from a diet and training side, and how do you make those assessments for people?
I take a very minimalistic approach. The less changes I make, the better it's going to be, because then you don't realize you are actually making a sacrifice for the process. So for me, what I'll do is I'll chart the endpoint. I know how you need to look like, and I want to find out where you are now. That's the start point. I need to know how many changes I need to make to the endpoint. Then I make one change at a time. It's as simple as that. Now, people expect big dramatic changes with nutrition. Give me 6 meals a day. I need to eat this. I need to eat that. No, it's not about that. It's about what you can do. Now, this is very individualistic. Some people may need 6 meals. Some people may do really well with 2 meals. Some people will do 2 meals and 2 big meals. Some people don't. So physiology plays a big role in this. And then this is, I guess this comes down to the skill of the coach. These are the questions I ask them. But what I tend to do is to make small changes. If let's say they're having 3 meals a day, then the change will be maybe to the types of foods that I want to put in per meal. I might make a change to breakfast and keep lunch, dinner, every other snack exactly the same to start off with. The smaller the change, the less they feel they have to sacrifice. Let them implement the change. Put that in place for a week or 2. They come back, they start to see some results, right? And then they go, great, this is good. Once they have implemented the changes and they can keep it, we move on to the next change. If they haven't been able to keep it, we don't change anything. So that's how I play around with it. Now, the more that they can change, the shorter the time frame that we have to prep them, because they're following the changes. They're committing to it.
Correct.
The less that they want to commit to it, which means the less that they put the changes in, the longer the prep process will be, because they're not ready to change.
Right. Right.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip, rapid cheat meal relief.
Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest, which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout. And what are some of the things that you see that where, say with coaches, that you see ladies get in trouble with, or other athletes? Like what's some telltale signs that you might not be with the right coach?
Most of the time you will find that the coach, what they do is that they turn up the workload very, very fast. So typically they'll expect a competitor to train 2 hours a day. Mm-hmm. When they first join, I mean, a starting workout is a 2-hour workout. I mean, man, if you haven't trained in the gym before, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, that's what I would do. But 2 hours to start off with, firstly, it's quite insane. And then they expect, 2 hours, 5 days a week. On top of that, you need to do cardio. On top of that, you need to get some posing. And they throw a female competitor in the mix straight away, from 0 to 100%.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So, the moment you get a coach like that, probably not the best coach for you, because what happens is, yes, will you see a change? Absolutely. But you will also burn out your adrenal system.
It's not sustained. It's not sustained. It gets radical results shortly in a quick period of time, but then there's no ceiling there. There's only the way to go downwards.
Absolutely. And once you see a change, your body adapts, which means that now if your body has adapted 12 weeks out from competition and you're already doing the maximal amount of workload you can, you are in trouble.
And so I see that happen with a lot of girls, and that's when they start resorting to chemicals and drugs and things like that to get the edge.
Massive calorie cuts.
Yeah.
It's where everything stuffs up. So too quick, too fast, that becomes a problem. So if your coach gives you something too quick, too fast, you probably need to ask why.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to drugs and cuts and all that kind of stuff, look, to each his own. If you are an athlete needing to compete in a competition at a level where aids are being used, by all means, but you need to understand how to use it from a chemical point of view, whether it suits your body, whether you can detoxify stuff, and whether your system has the amount of optimal health to kind of handle whatever you're putting in. So that's key.
What are some of the things that you see people making mistakes around that, like with chemical agents and using that? Just not no knowledge, or just hearsay evidence, or just random shotgunning, or taking too much product, or just listening to the wrong people? What are the things that you've noticed most often?
It's exactly all of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So a lot of them don't have any medical background behind it. They will ask a fellow competitor who has done it before and follow the exact same dosage for the fellow competitor, first and foremost. So you don't know, you can't individualize dosages. You're going, I'm going to follow that you because they look good. And so I assume I do that they look good. Secondly, you don't know where the product's from.
Yeah.
So the source of the product is extremely important. You will get it from someone that they have recommended, but where's that someone got it from?
Yeah.
So if your product is being diluted with a whole range of other chemicals, you don't know what you put into your system. Next, remember, you are assuming your body works on the same physiological basis as the other competitor. But what if your liver doesn't have the capacity to detoxify like the other competitor? Because at the end of the day, nowadays, it's the survival of the liver that allows you to look a certain way. If your liver can't survive, you're in trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, people talk about physical genetics, but there's I would call it the organ genetics. What is your capacity for tolerance of toxicity from the cascade of chemicals? Okay, let's move to the competitor who's just competed. They've finished the competition. They've achieved their goal. What happens then because that's a very precarious time, I feel, for people. Some people just get right back on the train again and go to the next competition and the next and kind of get on a cycle till they burn out. Some people go off the reservation, as they like to say, or off the train, and they just start eating everything and balloon up. So can you share with you, what do you do with your competitors when they complete in those cases where they want to continue competing, or they want to get off competing, or they're not really sure? How do you handle those situations?
Now, the first thing I'll tell them is, when I train someone to compete, I train someone for a medal. I don't train someone just to stand on stage. So I know my competitors for a fact. I've got a very good track record of everyone coming in or standing on the podium. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, period. So I will prep them before they stand up on stage or when they compete with me. And I'll let them know, look, you will stand up on stage and you will place, because that's how I train you to place. Now, you got to decide what you want to do after you place. And think about this even before you stand on stage. Do you want to continue competing, or is this the end all, the be all for you? You may not know until you stand on stage.
Correct.
And once you stand on stage, you will know whether you love the limelight, you want to keep going, or this is the end for you. Make that decision fast, because once you finish the comp, this is what determines what you're going to do. Now, so I'll prep them up. It's preempting it.
That's
so
great.
They were all
almost nobody talks about that stuff. That it's just the contest and that's it. That's the end. And
they will need to know what goes on, which is important. So for those that's the end point for them, great. Then you need to find out from them, if that's the end point, what do you want to do? You understand that your body will not look like this, because this is a one-time thing. Now, after that, what is your ideal body fat that you want to get up to? So then they need to understand within that period of a week where their body is extremely susceptible to drawing in fluids for inflammation, taking in sugar. This is where I need to pace them to go, okay, well, if this is the case, then I'll write down a plan of what they need to do. Now, typically in the industry, we call this reverse dieting.
Right.
I think reverse dieting is a very orthodox way of kind of looking at it, right? Because yes, there's a methodology of putting in food slowly, so you slowly increase the calorie count. But sometimes it's more than just increasing the calorie count, it's increasing the absorbability of what they can actually take in and the types of foods they can actually take in as well. So it is a reverse of some sort. I won't call it dieting per se, but it's definitely a reverse of a nutritional plan of sorts. Some of them I will add in more fat, some of them will be more carbs, some of them be less carbs, more fat, more protein. It just depends on the individual. But there will be a plan for each to slowly get out of the nutrition that actually got them to comp will not be their nutrition moving forward. So we got to alter that.
And then how long typically do you find it takes someone to kind of, I would say, regulate to their optimal body weight afterwards, or their, cosmetic ideal afterwards of kind of walking around state?
So the longer I take to prep the competitor into competition, the leaner they can maintain after competition, because it becomes a lifestyle for them.
Yeah.
The shorter the prep is, the more the competitor rebounds.
Yeah.
That's
it's going to vary between the person and that thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if my competitor takes 1 year to train with me, their mindset towards food and energy levels and training is completely different. It becomes a lifestyle for them. They walk around on a much leaner on a much leaner scale, and feeling healthy. So to get to prep for them to go into competition could mean, losing 4 kilos.
Yeah.
To stand up. So post-com, if they put on 4 kilos, they're back at where they were, normal, living healthy, happy.
Yeah.
No problem. Most people, though, don't do that.
Correct.
They drop really quickly, 15 kilos as a drop. Now expect that 15 kilos to come back just as fast as you've dropped it, because you haven't prepped your body for it physically, and mentally you're not ready for it.
Yeah. Now you talk about, let's go into the lady that shows up with the metabolic damage, that she's messed herself up. She's taken hormones, or she's gone the yo-yo dieting. She's struggling. She can't come out of it. She doesn't know what to do. They come into your office. What do you do with that particular individual, or what can they do?
The main thing is to find out how long they have had this particular damage for. Now, metabolic damage or metabolic damage, I think it's a disease that we've created on ourselves, and it's a name that is given to a particular syndrome. Remember, the body is very malleable and adaptable. The body can reverse that. So yes, it is severe. However, because you brought yourself into it, you can also get yourself out of it.
Right.
The longer you have been in that, the harder it is, obviously, to reverse that particular syndrome, which means that it has to be a conscious lifestyle decision to do that. Mm-hmm. So I find that metabolic syndrome is actually physiologically, it's an issue of the cells, but from a holistic perspective, it's actually an issue of the brain.
Okay. Expand on that.
Is the fact that you want to stay in that position because you want to look a certain way, and your brain says, I want to eat more, and you're saying no. Mm-hmm. So you continue to put yourself in that particular syndrome.
Right.
If you gave it what it needs, you get out of it.
So you're finding that you have to treat almost the psychology as much as the physiology.
If not more. Absolutely.
And so the next step is, I guess, so what are some of the things that you currently do, and how you get people, like what's your whole process now? Because I know you got a lot of courses, you're teaching all over the world, you run your own company. You want to talk a little bit about those things and what your mission is in the world?
Sure. Well, I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about it because I've been through it. And my objective right now, my goal is really to bring information out to the masses. I mean, we're talking about trainers down here who need to understand the body in more depth. I think, like, I come from a science background. I've done a Bachelor of Science, an honors in psychology as well. So my background is actually in psychology. I've done two main degrees, but science, if you look at science is very isolated in the sense that when it looks at information, it looks at information through a straw. Mm-hmm. So you only see the small area in front of you. You don't kind of consider the bigger picture, and that becomes a problem. And I think that science is extremely important, but we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. So I find that my passion is in teaching trainers to look at science, but also to consider it with regards to the bigger picture. You want to understand the body and how to get it down in terms of body composition, great, but you need to also look at the emotions. You need to look at hormones. You need to look at understanding nutrient absorption. You need to look at understanding, your gut bacteria, a whole range of different things. So I'm passionate about teaching trainers how to draw the dots, make the links between the body itself, to simplify a lot of these complex concepts and to make it applicable for their clients to get results immediately, basically. So I travel a lot to teach. I've got 6 courses that I have created, and I bring around to different countries to teach. So far, we're in 12 countries. We're looking to bring it to an extra 3 next year, take it up to 15. Canada, obviously I was in Canada this year. It was my first year at Canfitpro. Thoroughly enjoyed myself, but I want to bring my courses into Canfitpro. And funny enough, I'm talking to you right now. In a couple of days, I'll be in Bangkok at the Asia Fitness Conference, which is the largest conference in Asia speaking. And prior to that in Singapore and Bangkok, teaching my courses as well. So these 6 courses are out there. These courses focus on topics such as fat loss, fat loss specialization. We talk about hypertrophy, which is enabling your body to put on muscle effectively.
So these are the individual courses. So feel free to share what each, like the name of the course and then what it is. So.
Oh, sure. So we've got 3 categories of courses. One of them is based on fat loss and body transformation. That's one category. The next category is putting on muscle, which is hypertrophy. Comes in level 1 and level 2. And the third category of courses is what we call international coach qualifications, which means we teach trainers to be better coaches. This includes everything from program periodization to how to understand nutrition better and how to talk to your clients and implement compliance, put one thing at a time, how to make sure they adhere to it, how to understand the psychology behind it. So it's a coaching course, and we've got 2 to 3 levels of the coaching courses.
Wow. And then this is all available through your company. You want to talk about your company?
Absolutely. So my company is called Australian Strength Performance, and we're based in Melbourne, Australia. The courses are through Australian Strength Performance, and you can definitely check us out on our website, which is trainasp.com.au. So TRAIN, train, ASP, Australian Strength Performance.com.au. And we'll give you a whole range of, I guess, a better understanding of the range of courses that we actually carry, the 6 courses, where they're being held, and the qualifications that come with that.
That's great. And then I guess the other thing I was wondering about, so what's the future look like for you? What do you see happening for yourself? What do you see happening in the industry? What's the whole mandate and mission as moving forward from here?
At the end of the day, I think we all have a higher purpose. And everyone has to find what their higher purpose is. I think for me, I want to be a blessing to people around me. I want to impact people around me. To me, it's sharing information that I already know. Now, I'm not your best speaker out there. I'm not the most knowledgeable person. I keep wanting to learn, and whatever I can learn, I believe people can learn as well. So I'm wanting to share more. My goal is to be able to learn more for myself and to take that information to the masses out there, to the trainers out there. I want my courses to be the vehicle to be able to do that. And I want to be able to move into more countries to speak to them. More synergies, very much like what I'm doing with you, podcasts, talking with individuals of influence to be able to bring information out there. Now, we all have a message to share, and big or small, it's a message that can make an impact. If I could make an impact to one person, just one person, I think I've done what I needed to do. So sometimes it really just starts with one.
Got it. Now, when you're coaching with people, do you do that on an online basis? Is it a one-on-one meetup? How do you handle that side of the business side?
Right now, yes, I definitely do one-on-one sort of training. So, I mean, if they wanted to do a one-on-one training with me, they log on my website and have a look to see what we do. We do one-on-one physical training in my center in Melbourne, but obviously if they want to work with me on an international basis, if you're a competitor or you wanted to know more about health, we definitely do one-on-ones as well.
That's great. And then where can they find you, or where can they reach out to you?
Yep. So on the website, that's trainasp.com.au. Trainasp.com.au. You can see information on our online modules in terms of one-on-one training, in terms of courses, in terms of if you're in Australia, for example, you want to hop into our center, you definitely find that as well. But also on Instagram, you can check us out on TrainASP on Instagram, or my Instagram is Ben Performance Coach. And this is where you get to see a lot more about the stuff that I talk about. You get to see me a little bit more passionate, I guess, in my little streams where I actually talk to crowds and see what the information is all about and whether it actually resonates with you. I think that's the main thing. You've got to find something that resonates with you. That's
great. And so before we wrap it all up, any messages that you'd like to share out to our audience, or things that you'd like to communicate as a signing off? So
yeah, absolutely. You know what, one thing I would like to say is, if there are any coaches or trainers that actually hear this, it's very important to give. And give, and I mean give in terms of be generous with information. I remember in my earlier days as a coach, I was very selfish with information, and I learned a lot from courses and stuff, and I decided to keep it to myself because I felt that I was unique and this would make me different. Uh-huh. And the one thing I realized is that the more I kept to myself, the more I repelled coaches away from me. And I had a paradigm shift, and I decided to become someone who gave information away. The more I gave, the more it was given unto me, the more I learned. The more the more empowered I am, the more I want to empower. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, it's brought me around the world to be able to teach and to be able to give. And right now, my philosophy is in giving. I love to give. As you know, the more you ask, the more I can give, the more I will. And I think that's important because we all need to learn. There is no use taking information to your grave. The more you learn, the more you can empower. And there's so many people out there that listen to a lot of information out there, but they don't know the truth. And the truth is being hidden from us from marketing. The truth is hidden from us from, corporate organizations and stuff. And a large degree of what we need to understand as individuals, as parents, teaching our children is actually what is pertinent to our health. And so if there is a level of understanding that I can give, I want to be able to do that. And if there are coaches that are listening to this who feel that they take information away that they can give away, do so, because it will come back.
It's great. I'm glad that you said that, because I've always found that by providing those little tidbits or those moments of inspiration or those insights out in the world, it's amazing how all of a sudden you get accepted as a professional and understanding. People see you like, wow, that guy's really generous with his information stuff. If he's telling me this, I really want to find out what else does he know, as opposed to the person that's kind of guarding and not really singing their music. And I think it's almost the reverse psychology of what some people think. They got to hide the secrets or hide the things, but actually the more open and genuine they spread it, the bigger the message goes, the more people get it, and ultimately the more people respond to it.
I mean, what I'm speaking, like I said, I'm definitely not your best speaker. I'm not your best lecturer. I'm not the most knowledgeable person out there. What I know is not new. What I know is out there in Google. You go Google it, you'll be able to find it. But what I believe is unique is I'm able to take information with my own life experience and actually give it. And that's what makes a difference to people, because people relate to that. So never be afraid to share information. Information exists out there. It's already there. You're not inventing anything new.
Mm-hmm.
You are repackaging it because you are an individual, interpreting it, and then giving it to someone who will take that interpretation and be blessed with it. And so I think people need to look at that.
I think that's a beautiful way to sum up the coaching experience, is synthesizing the information that's available into a way that people can digest it, absorb it, and utilize it inside their life. And of course, that's what we are at the Awesome Health program. We're all about that. So I want to thank you, Ben, for joining us all the way from Australia. We tried to do this episode before. It got messed up in the recording. So I really appreciate that you came back to the well and went for it again. Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me back.
You bet. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
At Bioptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.